a slideshow to share with you to go along with my talk today. So I'm going to share my screen now, and it should take about 30 minutes or so, more or less. And there'll be time afterwards for questions and answers. So let me get it going here. Practiced this yesterday, so I should remember how to do it from the beginning. Can everybody, Ashley, does that look good? Can see it? Okay, so I am really interested in toilet learning. I am a mother of two. Both of my kids started at post-stroke school in the YCC. Before I got into Montessori, I was a psychology major in college, and I know that toilet learning is so connected to psychology and how a child feels about themselves and how they feel in the environment. And so that's a big piece of what I'm going to bring today, is really talking about supporting the child psychologically through this really important acquisition. I also wanted to say that although I have some ballpark ages and stages of how toileting happens in a child, it really is unique to the individual. So we have to remember that we can't put children in this, like it's going to happen by this time, that there's always a range in development, no matter what area we're talking about. That being said, I am really excited to share with you today really toilet learning from a Montessori perspective and how we use Montessori philosophy and theory to guide us in this really important acquisition. In the first 3 years of life, children learn how to do so much, and becoming independent and using the toilet's just one of those big acquisitions. So Maria Montessori says that children do not learn by listening to words, but by active experiences in the environment. And that is our aim with the young child from birth, to give them experiences that are going to lead to a seamless transition to independence in this area. Sorry, I'm going to just move a bar here so I can see the next slide. So what is Montessori about toilet learning? How do we put this together with the foundational Montessori philosophy? So I'm going to hit on a few foundational Montessori concepts today. We know that each child is born with an inner drive to learn from birth, and they use the power of their absorbent mind to learn effortlessly from the experiences that they have in the environment and from seeing what those around them are doing. Maria Montessori talks a lot about the process of adaptation, how a child is born ready and able to adapt to their time and their place in their culture. And toileting is one of the things that they adapt to by seeing how it's done in their family and in their communities. Now, Montessori education also focuses on the process rather than the product. So we know that it's in the process, the learning period, that how a child learns is more important than when the acquisition happens. So we're really going to focus on the process during this talk. And then, of course, a huge Montessori concept is the prepared environment. So looking at our role as parents and caregivers in preparing an environment where the child can be successful. Maria Montessori also says, the greatest of the human personality begins at the hour of birth. So education must start at birth. The aim of education of the very young child is not preparation for school, but preparation for life. And in a Montessori approach to toilet learning, we really steer away from the idea of training a child, and we talk about the learning process instead. Because when we think about training, it's kind of like we're trying to get a child to do what we want them to do, what we want them to do. If you're thinking about learning something, we think about it as supporting a natural process, something that the child wants to do. It is participatory, whereas training, taking a training approach, is like the adults are the active ones and the children are the passive ones. So we're gonna be the more passive. Of course, we're not passive, but we have a lot of preparation to do. But we are going to give it over to the child and have them participate and collaborate as much as possible. I'm going to just touch very briefly on this next slide, and I'll come back to it later. Something that I see is kind of like 3 stages in the toilet learning process. The first stage happens around the first year of life, and it's really the exploration phase. The child may pee in their underwear or their diaper. They don't seem to mind. They may or may not indicate that they know. They might sit on the toilet at routine times, but nothing usually happens, or maybe it just happens occasionally. And then there's the second phase, which is the practice phase. And this is when a child can sit on the toilet at routine times set up by the adult and can intentionally release. It takes a while for children to get here, even within a structured routine. I'll have children for a really long time that sit so many times a day and nothing happens. And we can talk a little bit later about ways to kind of help children relax to make it happen. Those who kind of are holding and won't do it. It's like they'll sit on the toilet and they want to, they're willing, and nothing happens. And then, you know, the minute they get up and get involved with a piece of work and their body's relaxed and their mind is relaxed, it's going to happen. So we'll talk about ways to kind of help that intentional release. So these children at this stage, once they can release at routine times, they stay dry within a structured adult initiated routine. And then the third stage is really the stage of independence. And it's where the child takes initiative in using the toilet on their own. They know when they need to go in advance, and most of the time they can get there. Now, there are 4 factors for success in toilet learning, and all 4 of these have to be in place for the child to become independent. There's the piece of self-awareness. They have to be able to interpret their bodily cues. And we're going to talk about all 4 of these and how to support them a little later on. I'll just give an overview now. And then there's the physiological development. So the child physically has to be able to hold, release, and control their sphincters. And then the piece of functional independence. The child can dress and undress themselves is a huge piece in being able to be independent in the toileting area. And then the child has to have the desire. Now, we talked about the inner drive and the desire, they're born with it, right? But sometimes things that we do can get in the way of that desire, and they start wanting to do things for us, or they don't want to do it because we want them to do it, or we get in power struggles. So there are things that we can do to help the child stay intrinsically motivated and keep that desire to learn and to continue to grow in this area. So we're going to talk about preparing the environment, and we're going to put a lot of emphasis on the psychological environment, which is foundational. And we'll also talk about the practicalities of the physical environment to support it. The psychological environment really has to do with us and the kind of atmosphere we create for the child around toilet learning, the attitudes that we have, the perspective we have, the language we use, and it has to do with how the child feels about themselves in the process. And then, of course, the physical environment is setting up a toileting area and thinking about the child's clothing for independence and establishing a routine within that. This is kind of redundant. You're going to hear me say things again and again that I feel are really important. The psychological environment cannot be underestimated. It makes all the difference in how the child responds to this process and how they feel about themselves for a really long time. So our attitudes, our language, making sure there are no rewards and no punishments, because we want that to be an intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic. They're not doing it for us or for something. They're doing it because that's what people do, and they want to do what the people around them do. There's also no shame. It's very important. You'll hear that again later. And it's always an atmosphere of collaboration. I'm going to get a little bit more into our attitude and our perspective. We have an attitude of acceptance. So without judgment, we fully accept the child right where they are in the process. We have patience. We understand that there's no set timeline in the process and that it's unique to each individual child. And we trust. We believe that the child is capable and they want to become independent in this area. And there's this quote, I can't remember who it's by, but I really like it. I think about it often in development. When the child can, they will. Friendliness with error. We welcome mistakes and what perceived failures. We embrace these moments as learning opportunities. We manage expectations. We let go of our agenda and our expectations. We have confidence that with the right environment and the right experiences, the child will find success. We let go of our desire to control and give it over to the child. Ultimately, it's the child's work, and it's something that they have to do. And we will set up the supportive environment for them to do it, but we have to give it over to them and realize that it really is their work. And then the modeling is a key piece. They have to be able to see the toileting process with members of your family. And I mean, toileting community is just amazing in a toddler community because they're seeing people at all stages of the process all the time. And it really, really helps. Our mistakes can teach us more than our successes. I think this is important to remember as parents. It's true for us. We're going to make mistakes along the way. I've made plenty. I still continue to make mistakes with my children, and I see them as learning opportunities. And for the child, just as we would not expect our child who's learning how to walk to never fall down, we cannot expect our child who's learning to use the toilet to be successful from the start. Now we're going to get into the language that we use and some tips and some examples. Keep the language positive. Really be mindful of not just the words that you use, but your tone and your facial expressions. Sometimes we can say something, we think we're saying it so neutrally, like our words are like just matter of fact, very objective. Oh, it looks like you're wet, but our tone is, it looks like you're wet, or you're wet again, or, you know, just a tone or a look. We have to be really, really mindful of just our body language, our how we're saying these things to children, because we don't want them to feel any amount of shame in these accidents or misses. Keeping it objective, that's part of it. No judgment. Connecting language to experience. So talking about what the child feels and sees and what to expect, and even from the beginning, telling a child what you're doing with them when you're doing it. Talking about what the wipe is going to feel like when you clean their bottom. Giving them as much language to connect to their experience as possible. Avoiding, if you really want a child to cooperate, like you really would like them to sit down and try to pee, don't ask a yes or no question. Like, would you like to go to the bathroom? Do you have to go to the bathroom? Do you feel like your pee is coming? Like for the younger child, like the 2-year-old, or even, you know, almost 2, their answer is going to be no. No, I don't. No, thank you. I'm not doing it. So avoid yes or no questions when you want them to cooperate. If it's just like checking in and raising self-awareness, oh, do you feel wet? Like you can ask those questions, or how does your body feel? I wonder what it's telling you. But really, if you want them to sit on the toilet, really make it matter of fact. You're going to use the toilet now, and then we'll go outside. Just this and then that. And smiling and making it light will help them want to do what you want them to do as well. So here are some examples. I see that you are wet. It's time to sit on the potty. Let's get changed. And try to avoid saying you need to. I've just really wiped that out of my vocabulary, because that's just, it just invites power struggle right away as soon as somebody's being told what they need to do or have to do. So instead of saying you need to go get changed or you need to use the bathroom, I say, let's get changed. And it sounds really collaborative, and they're more likely to go with you. And, you know, self-reflecting or helping them self-reflect when they're wet. Oh, did you feel your pee coming out? What did that feel like? Being curious about it, helping them listen to and feel what's happening in their body. If nothing happens on the toilet, just being optimistic. Oh, well, maybe something will come out next time, or we'll try again in a little while. And then for the older ones, especially, I like to use what is your body telling you? You'll see in that 3rd stage that often the child starts resisting the routine that you've set up. And that's a good sign, because they're really starting to say, like, I don't need your structured routine. I'm listening to my body. And that's exactly what we want. So those older ones who are 2.5, getting close to 2.5, 3, if they say, I'll say, it's time to sit on the toilet before we go outside. And they look at me and they say, oh, I don't need to go. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, I'm glad you're listening to your body. And then, of course, if they don't make it and they have an accident, it's just feedback. It's just feedback. Oh, yeah, you thought that you didn't have to go. Maybe you should try again next time. And then celebrating with the child without overly praising or getting too excited, really matching their level of excitement. So they pee in the toilet, they're happy about it, and we match that excitement and we say something like, you peed in the toilet. How did that feel? Instead of saying, oh, yay, oh, you did it, you know, and making it a big celebration. I know inside we feel like that sometimes, especially like that first time, but to try to avoid that overreaction and just kind of meet them right where they are. And then we're going to come back to the 4 factors for success and talk about each one and how to support each one. And the first one we're going to talk about is the physiological development. And actually, this is just really physical body development and brain development, and there's not a whole lot we can do to change it. It has to do with the body's ability to hold and control the sphincters. It's dependent upon the process of myelinization in the brain. So as the neural pathways become more insulated with myelin, they gain more muscle control in their body. And the myelinization process in the brain happens from the head down and from the inside out, cephalocaudal and proximal distal. And so by the time the child's walking, using those leg muscles and their hips, we know that most likely the myelinization process has reached that toileting area as well. And so not necessarily that it's complete, but that it's becoming complete. And so they'll have more success in holding more often. And that usually occurs between 12 and 18 months. And of course, it can vary from child to child. And then there's the levels of self-awareness. This is just kind of based on my observations. First, they're kind of unaware. They might pee in their underwear or their diaper and they just go about their business. They don't even let you know. You have no idea that they did, except for the evidence of the puddle on the floor or the wet underwear. And then later they start to say like, I peed, like in the past, like they're aware that it happened at some point. You don't know when exactly they became aware, but they might say to you, I peed. And then they start to get to the point where, and I have several children in my class at this time, there's like so close to that independence, but or that self-awareness, they're like, in the moment, I'm peeing right now, I'm peeing, and it's like, okay, it's so close. And eventually, and probably very soon, they're going to get to the point where they say, oh yeah, my body's telling me I have to pee. I have the ability to hold it and I can get to the toilet. And supporting self-awareness. So something happened in our culture about 50 years ago, a little more than 50 years ago. And it's when families started using disposable diapers instead of cloth. And before the disposable diapers became so popular, children really, they were toilet aware and toilet, independent much earlier. And I think there's several factors go into that. One is that with cloth diapers, the child gets feedback immediately about their body. They get to feel what it feels like to be wet. And disposable diapers are just really good at helping the child feel comfortable. And the child can go in a disposable diaper several times, sometimes without a parent realizing it. So a lot of times when a child is in cloth diapers, the parent is more aware of when it's happening too. And if a child pees in a cloth diaper more than once, it could really be a problem. So that the parent is more in touch with what's going on in the child's body too. And then there's the fact that just cloth diapers are a lot of work. And so parents were a little more motivated, I feel like, to get out of that phase and start the toilet learning earlier, because enough of these cloth diapers. They're so hard to wash and dry. And so the process just started earlier, and now disposable diapers are just so convenient, and there are definitely a lot of positives to them for sure. But it's changed the level of self-awareness, I think, in children, and it's changed parents' desire for the timing, like of when to start toilet learning. So one thing that you can do is cloth diapering and cloth underwear, giving the child the feedback about their body and their bodily functions. And then, of course, the language we use always helps with self-awareness. So connecting, you heard me say this before, connecting the child's experience to language and asking questions about what they're feeling inside their body. And now we're going to talk about supporting independence, one of my favorite topics. So in order to understand independence, we have to first talk about dependence. The human child is born one of the most dependent mammals on the planet. We have one of the longest periods of dependency. And for good reason. We needed to grow our brain more than we could during our gestation. So we were basically born not quite all the way developed, and we needed the children need their parents' care and protection to continue developing in a really, really safe place. And so dependence is necessary, and dependence can last for quite a while. And the road from dependence to independence is not a straight line that's never interrupted and just keeps going more toward independence. It goes back and forth and can vary for a really long time in different areas of development. And I came across this Mr. Rogers quote last week. I'm really into him. I found this book, so good. Many Ways to Say I Love You. And besides Mary Montessori, I think he's my next favorite parenting guide. But he says something interesting about dependence that I wanted to share with you. He says, knowing that dependence is both available and encouraged when necessary makes it easier for young children to be independent. Isn't that interesting? Seems like a paradox. And it's the same for attachment and separation. When a child feels truly attached and secure in their relationship with their caregivers, they are free to become independent because they trust the world. They're more willing to branch out and take risks and be their own self. So we're going to think about that: independence, attachment, separation, and then also understanding that collaboration starts from the very beginning. It is participatory. The child is, we are not doing things to a child, we're doing them with the child. Believing a child is capable. Scaffolding, so giving as much help as needed and teaching the skills that will help them learn to do things for themselves. Giving time and space. So often children are much more capable than we give them credit for. They're just too rushed to do it. So if we can give them time and space, you'll be so surprised at what they're able to do. And then letting the environment help, setting the environment up for success and for independence. And then of course the clothing for independence, and we'll talk about both of those more in depth. And I love this quote by Simone Davies, the author of the Montessori Toddler: "Give as much help as needed and as little as necessary." So how do we support the child's desire, keeping it alive? Another Mr. Rogers quote. Oh, I just love him. There is a world of difference between insisting on someone doing something and establishing an atmosphere in which that person can grow into wanting to do it. We have to make sure that the process is not stressful, that the child feels no pressure, and that we avoid power struggles. We can keep intrinsic motivation alive by avoiding rewards and punishments and not shaming the child, by celebrating the accomplishments with the child. Now we're going to talk about setting up the physical space. And I hope all of this is really good practical information for you that you can use right away. The physical environment. So we're going to talk about setting up the toileting area and clothing for independence. And feel free to take a screenshot of the slides if you find them helpful. That might be good. So for example, here, the supplies for the toileting area. You'll need a small potty chair of some kind. I'll show some examples in a minute. You'll need a stool or a bench. It's helpful for dressing and undressing, just the child size. You need a basket for clean underwear and or diapers, and a container for holding the toilet paper and the wipes. Laundry basket or a hamper for dirty laundry. I didn't put it on here, but a trash can for the trash. And if you can, fit it in your space, a full-length mirror or a mirror of some kind. Children really love to look at themselves while they're dressing and undressing. And here are a couple examples of some spaces that are set up. Here on the left, it's a smaller bathroom, but we see there's a hand towel at the child's height. There's a step stool at the sink so the child can wash their hands and dry their hands independently. You see the basket of training undies and diapers, and there's a basket of wet wipes and toilet paper, and even a book tucked in there. It'd be very helpful in helping the child be patient and wait for their body to do something. And then of course the child-sized toilet. And then here's another very simple setup with just a basket with everything that's needed, the potty on the ground, and a little stool for dressing and undressing. And here are a few different potty options. They're, depending on your bathroom setup, your child's size, what they like, there's just so many different options out there. I will say we have a flushing toilet, and the children like that, but they really like the potty chairs on the ground, especially when they're smaller with the little inserts. And I think the number one motivating factor, and this is an external motivation, but it's built into the process, is if they pee in that little toilet, they get to dump it out into the big toilet and flush it down by themselves. And they love that. They love to dump out their pee. And I think for some who have been hesitant or like uncomfortable peeing on the toilet, or like they sit there and they just want it so bad. They're like, I just want to pee. Even if they just get a drop, they're like ecstatic and they just want to dump it in and flush it down. So there's that benefit of that kind of toilet, but there are many different options. Now we're going to go back to the timing of the process and the 3 stages again, kind of walk through when to start and what to do. Again, the 3 stages of toilet learning: the exploration, the practicing, and then the leading to independence. So the process: how and when do we introduce the toilet and the toileting routine? So the first year is exploration and discovery. 1 to 2 years, practice and learning within a structured routine. And then 2 years plus increasing levels of self-awareness and independence in this area. So introducing the toilet, birth to walking. Why would we start so early? The younger child is more likely to go with the flow and accept what is. It's easier to establish new routines. Now, the thing about 2-year-olds, they're amazing. And I call them the terrific 2s. Some people say they're the terrible 2s. And it might be because the child is going through what we call an oppositional crisis. Their favorite word might be no. They have a need for autonomy and asserting themselves. So trying to establish a brand new routine of toileting at this time when the child is saying, no, I'm learning how to do what I want, is just going to be harder because they're already in that mode of power struggles. So starting earlier is often easier because they're more likely to go with the flow. And of course, starting earlier, the more experience, the better. So from birth to walking, I touched on this already, but seeing your child as a collaborator from the beginning, a participant in their care. They're active. If the child is active and participating from the very beginning as much as they possibly can, as they gain more skills and they're able, they just kind of take over the process because they know they've always been a part of it. It's not like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I bet you could put your own pants on. I think you can put your own pants on now. You're big enough, put your pants on. It's like all along from the very beginning, they've been helping to pull up their pants. And so they just, as they do more and more, we do less and less, and they take over more of the process. And seeing all caretaking activities as something done with the child rather than something done to them, including diapering, changing, bathing, and feeding. Giving language to experience again. I say that a lot. Connect their experience with language. And observation. Really watch your child, learn their patterns, know your child. There's something called elimination communication, where some children really don't wear diapers at all from the very beginning. The parents, I don't think I could have ever done this, but the parents are so in tune with their child, they just know when they need to pee. They know when they need to go to the bathroom, and they just help them get there on time. And of course, it's the adult leading that, but by reading the child's cues. But this summer, I was observing through Zoom a child in this training course I was in. She was about 9 months old. She lived in South America, and she was with her mom, and she was just playing independently. And the mom noticed that she was making like some faces, like she was gonna have a BM. And she said, "Oh, Luna, I noticed that you might have to poop." And she kind of nodded. And she said, "Let me help you get to your potty." And she had a potty area set up, and she just took her over to the potty, took her pants off, her diaper off, set her on the potty, and within a minute, she did her thing in the toilet. And the mom was paying attention, and the child was giving signs, and the child was young enough to like go with the flow, and she did it. And so the child was able to feel what it felt like to do that in the toilet, which anytime you can offer that, it's experience that they can learn from. And then modeling, again, showing, letting the child be a part of the process with other family members. Having a small potty available and set up and ready to go. Once the child is able to sit, offer sitting on the toilet at diaper changes, upon waking, perhaps before bed, maybe once or twice a day. I set up a toilet for my daughter, a potty, when she was about 7 months old, maybe 8 months old, somewhere around there. And I think it was a miracle. It never happened again. But the first 8 out of 10 times that I sat her on the little potty, she either peed or pooped. And I was blown away. I was like, well, it can't be this easy. And that was a positive experience. And it didn't happen at that rate, like that success rate from then on, but it was great. And it reassured me that it's possible. So establishing a routine beyond walking, 12 to 18 months. So once the child is standing and walking, diaper changes can be done standing up. I don't know how many of you do that. We only do diaper changes and underwear changes standing up here. And it allows for the child to collaborate. When a child is laying down, it's much harder to participate in the process. So that's just one practical tip. Get them involved, get them standing for all those changes, and invite their cooperation and their collaboration. Establish a consistent routine that works for your family. So here are some ideas of when to have the child sitting on the toilet, but you don't have to do all of them. Really think about your family schedule and how it can fit in. Upon waking is a really good time. Often they're ready to go to the bathroom. It can be a successful moment because it's the right timing. After snacks and after meals, there's the gastrointestinal reflex, I think it's called. And when something goes into the body, often something needs to come out. So that's another time when it could possibly happen. Before a nap, after a nap, before leaving the house, upon returning to the house, before a bath, before bed. Offer the toilet using those special phrases that children want to cooperate with, but never force. So if a child says no, and they really don't want to, please don't force it. Trust that they will want to soon, and just offer it again. Okay, well, we can try again in a few minutes. Or, all right, well, we'll try again when we come in from the park. Like I said, use language that engenders cooperation rather than asking. Increase the amount of time spent in cotton underwear. So the more time in underwear or cotton diapers or underwear, even with covers, thick covers, the more feedback the child will have and the greater self-awareness they will have. And I'm going to give some examples of some thick cotton underwear and covers that you can use, and then talk about clothing for independence. So here are some examples. There are many, many, many. If you Google search best training pants, best reusable training pants, you'll get a lot of options out there. There's the muumuus. We've had a lot of success with those in our classroom. There's these other ones I don't even know how to say, the skills maybe. The Gerber does a great one. They make a thicker, more waterproof one, and then they make a thinner one as well, but still has some absorbency. And then the thin underwear, once they're really becoming independent, the thin underwear are really great because they're so easy to get on and off. And they feel like when they start wearing those thin underwear, I think they get a boost of self-confidence. They feel bigger and older. And there's always the diaper covers that can go over the cotton underwear if you're worried about a lot of spills or leaks. And then thinking about clothing for independence, we need loose-fitting clothing, maybe going a size up. Big head holes, big arm holes, and big leg holes. This is really about setting the child up for success with dressing and undressing themselves. Elastic waistbands, no fasteners, no snaps or buttons or buckles that the child can't do by themselves. Easy open shoes that really open really, really wide so they can get their foot in. And socks that stretch open easily. One little tip, I had a girl who, girls' leggings can be very, very hard to put on and off. But she would buy a size or two up of the leggings at Target, really inexpensive. And so they were looser fitting. And then she would cut off like the bottom 6 inches. And so then it opened up the ankle hole as well. So it was perfect because she could buy an inexpensive pair of pants and make it adjustable to her child's body. And it really helped with the dressing and undressing for this little girl. Staying out of the way, this final stage, where they're getting so close, where they're really doing well with an established routine, but they're on the brink of becoming really independent. So we have to allow the child to do more and more of the process themselves and encourage them to listen to their bodies. So 2 years and on, continue with a consistent routine that works with your family. Allow the child to do more of the process by themselves. Let them know. Sometimes you just have to tell them. They think they need to tell you. They think they need someone with them because you've always been with them through the process. But so sometimes they just need to hear, and I'll tell the kids in my class this, they'll come and say, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom. And I'll say, oh, you know what to do, or, oh, go for it. You just go right ahead, and then I'll tell them later, if you have to go to the bathroom, you could go and you don't even have to tell me. If it's safe to do that in your house, you can just let them know. Then that just encourages the independence even more. Encourage them to listen to their bodies, trust their bodies, and talk about what it feels like to have to go to the bathroom. Teach them how to wipe themselves and let them practice. Offer the clothing for independence. Let them practice taking their clothes on and off and on and off, even when there's absolutely no reason, especially when there's no reason. When there is a reason to get dressed, we're usually rushed, right? But if it's just, we're just hanging out with the family and the child wants to go to their dresser and pull out all the shirts and try on a few different shirts and try on pants and take them off, that practice is invaluable. It's a time when they're doing it because they want to, and they're really learning so many skills in that practice, and they're not rushed. And it's about their work and not about getting somewhere, getting them ready to go somewhere. Give as much time as you possibly can, and look the other way or sit on your hands to avoid offering help when it's not needed. It's so hard. It's so hard to sit in front of a child who's trying to put a sock on, and you're just like, you see them get so close, like 10 times, so many times, and you just are like, can I please help you with that? Can I please, and sometimes you have to offer the help because you have to get somewhere, but when you can, just walk away or look the other way and just let them try, because that's where the learning happens, in that practicing, that repetition, that trying, that striving. That's where the real learning happens. So let's also keep in mind that we need to understand setbacks and regressions. They happen, they're expected, and they're normal. They can happen at times of transition and change. So a change in the family, a change in the family routine, moving up to a new classroom, starting school again after distance learning. The child must feel comfortable, safe, and settled to be able to do this well and feel good about it. And it takes time to learn a new physical setup. And in new environments, when things are so interesting, and a lot of times even a child who's been more successful because they were listening to their internal cues, their focus and attention becomes external because of all the interesting things going around them in the classroom, in the new classroom or at the new place. And so they start to not listen to their body because they're, and so it'll sneak up on them and they'll realize that they had to go to the bathroom, but it was too late. That happens. And it can throw the child off, but our response is what matters. That's what matters. How we handle those misses is really key. It can affect issues of control. So if a child feels like something in their world is out of control, changes are happening. One thing they can try to control is what happens in their body, what goes in, food, and what comes out. So children who are struggling with issues of control or trying to find control will often start holding, especially BMs. And that can really lead to medical complications of constipation and wedding accidents as well, because when there's a mass of a BM in there, the bladder capacity is smaller and it's harder to hold, even your urine. So feelings of control, feelings of pressure from outside, from parents or teachers, feeling that pressure can affect how they do, and then feelings of shame. So those are all things we want to try to avoid. So what can we do about it? We offer our full acceptance and our reassurance of love, and just knowing that it's a phase that they'll get through and we are not worried. Patience, trust, calm neutrality when accidents happen, and offer all the help that is needed and as little as necessary. I love that. And I'm going to say it again, especially if the child's going through a transition or they're in a new place. This helps the child feel secure and supported. The child who feels secure and supported is free to become independent. And that is the end of my talk. I hope we have some time for questions. I'm just going to show you some resources, some books that I recommend. The Montessori Toddler by Simone Davies. She is wonderful. It's not just about toileting, it's about Montessori for your young child in the home. Diaper Free Before 3. She's a urologist, and a lot of what she says is in line with how we do things in Montessori. And then the Toilet Awareness book by Sarah Mutri is also a great resource for parents. Here are some books for children. Everyone Poops, The Potty Book, and Once Upon a Potty. Now, the potty book we read a lot in my class, and Everyone Poops. I don't have Once Upon a Potty, but I remember it fondly when, my sister is 13 years younger than me. And when my sister was potty training when I was 15-year-old, I helped in the process. And this is the book, Once Upon the Potty, that I read to my sister all the time. So my 15-year-old self recommends it. So I don't really remember. I hope it's good. But when I saw it, I was like, yes, that because of that book, my sister used to, learn to use the toilet. So anyway, take it for what it is. You may like it, you may not. Hope it's not offensive. And then some resources of articles and websites, the Montessori Notebook, a Motherly article I saw just a couple weeks ago about Montessori phrases to use for potty learning, and it gives lots of really great examples of language and how to say things and why we say things that way. And then a video on toilet learning by the Montessori Guide by trainer Carrie Lantz. She's a 0 to 3 trainer, one of my trainers, and she does a 15-minute video about toilet learning in a Montessori way, which is really great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can see everybody, or see your names at least. Now we're back to the view of everybody, but nobody wanted to be recorded. That's okay.
Okay.